Ken Trahan with Lenny Van Gilder. It's our First NBC Bank weekend preview brought to you by First NBC Bank with 35 locations throughout the metropolitan New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNoah.com. First NBC Bank is a proud sponsor of prep sports, period, across the board, not just for our entities at SportsNoah.com and WHNO Television, but for other media entities as well. They champion prep sports. And like many people across the state, there must be some consternation at First NBC Bank about the vote to split now in 4 sports effective the 2016-2017 school year, which would include not only football, but now you add baseball, softball, and basketball. That's boys and girls basketball, as well as, of course, girls softball. So, Lenny, obviously this is, to me, a troubling development because it sends a message that we don't want to compete with you. We don't want to work out differences and work together. We just want to take our ball and go home, and you can go do your own thing. And this goes as a win to the public schools, by and large, because this is what they want. They don't want to compete with private schools. Some schools that are deemed select will be with the private schools, and there might be some people that feel like they're discriminated against. I don't mind saying, normally we just talk about the facts, but I'm totally against this. I think it's a bad move with a bad message.
It's very disappointing. It really is. It sends a bad message to everything. It's like if we don't like our rules, we're going to take our ball and we're going to go somewhere else. It's what the message that it basically sends. We talked about this in this very spot 3 years ago when the football split first happened, and now we see it, essentially across the board at this point with, just about all of the sports that compete in classifications will now have classes, will now have divisions. And we've even brought girls sports into this as well, which, I mean, it's very unfortunate that we're even having to have this conversation, but it is what the principals voted to do. Fairly overwhelmingly, 60% of the vote going to in favor of this split. And I think what you see in this, and again, as we're sitting here talking, it's just a few minutes after the vote has taken place, but the consensus from Alexandria on north is for this. I think you see a little more of an even divide, if not even a lean towards not splitting down along the I-10 corridor, because these people that's where the propensity of these public schools are. But the ones up in North Louisiana feel much differently.
Well, there's also the feeling that in the New Orleans and Baton Rouge markets in particular, there are many public and private schools who have good relationships and compete with each other and don't have any problem whatsoever. That obviously isn't the case in other circles. And listen, I'm not faulting anybody. It's just my opinion. And I understand people feel like they have to do what's best for their school, but I think therein lies the problem. It's not about one, it's about the whole and the greater good. And I think that's what gets lost here. And nobody talks to the kids, because I'm 1,000% sure that if you ask the kid at McDonough 35, as an example, if they wanted to play St. Augustine and compete with them in the playoffs, the answer would be, hell yeah. But nobody's asking the kids. They don't care about the kids. They only care about their own cause, their own parents, their trophy, because now we're going to have trophies like you've never seen. And Lenny, you know the format for these sports that we're talking about. Basketball, softball, baseball. Can you imagine? How is Sulphur going to handle all these championships in softball and baseball? I mean, that's a nightmare, and they do a great job there. I mean, it's just a nightmarish situation. Just multiply the football times like 6. And that's a mess as it is.
Right. You're talking about, if you maintain the same format, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. You're talking about 96 teams going to Sulphur for softball. Now, first of all, I'm not sure there are 8 teams in some of these divisions that are going to get broken out. So it may not end up being that way. We would just send everybody there. It doesn't. Well, there's a lot of questions to be answered about this. You're talking about 48 teams in basketball, in boys and then in girls basketball. So we're going to play 12 championship games. That's 6 a day, I guess, starting at like 10 o'clock on Friday morning. That's when you should decide a championship, at 10 o'clock on a Friday morning, right?
That's brilliant. Just like the football, brilliant. What an idiotic thing to do. And I will say it here publicly. Listen, I think Eddie Bonai miscalculated, but at the same time, I want to give him credit, because this man's tried very hard to try to put this back together. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, had a great fall, all the king's horses, all the king's men, couldn't put Humpty together again. That's how Eddie Bonai feels right now. He's crestfallen. He has a 4-year contract, but at this time, I got to believe he's probably thinking, what did I get into this for?
Exactly. And he does have Louisiana ties, even though he came from Nevada to be here, but you got to wonder why if you're him, why do you want to be in this spot? Your job was to try to bring this thing back together, and now it's split apart even more. And look, there are a number of ramifications. We got in the next few days we can really get into all of this, but it's this is, let's just leave it at this, a bad day for high school sports in Louisiana. Some will try to tell you it's good, but I think you're talking to two guys here who will tell you it's bad.
Yes, we're glad to do it. And I should tell you, too, that at sportsnola.com, we have a lot of contributors that are both from the private and public side. And I dare say if you talk to all of our contributors, they'd probably say they would prefer to see everybody competing as well. But that's simply the way it goes. We move on. Senior Bowl, of course, on Saturday. 3 LSU kids that are figuring to be high draft picks from the third round up, and Alexander and Mills and Debo Jones of Jesuit as well. A kid from SLU that figures to go as early as the fourth round, and Ed Egan, who could be a draft pick as well. They've practiced all week. Al Dupuy wrote about it, and we'll watch the game and see what happens.
That's the strange thing about this week. The game is really anticlimactic.
Yeah.
The practices, the meetings, everything that goes on leading up to Saturday is what's important. And it's interesting how that goes on. Well, kudos to Ed Egan. He was sitting there on that alternate list. A couple of injuries happened late Wednesday. He gets the phone call, heads from New Orleans to Mobile, and he's getting a chance to play. And even in one day of practice, I think he opened up some eyes a little bit. So, perhaps he is moving up the boards. But yeah, you mentioned the cornerback from Southeastern. He has been one that's gotten a lot of attention, from some of the pundits there in terms of his stock.
Pelicans played very well without two primary players, actually three if you want to count the numbers, with Gordon to go along with Tyreek Evans and Anthony Davis, and still posted an impressive win over Sacramento. Ryan Anderson went off. Drew Holiday was outstanding, and now they're back home again on Saturday night against the lowly Nets. This is a game they have to win.
Have to win this one, and you got to find a way really to try to get the one on Monday against Memphis as well to finish out the homestand 6-1. That would be a good way, because it doesn't get any easier next week. You got road trips to San Antonio and Cleveland coming up.
Yes, against really good competition. So we'll see how that pans out. And SportsNola.com's prep coverage will continue with another sport that we're venturing into and we're really looking forward to this coming Monday.
And one you and I know a little bit about, bowling. Should be a lot of fun. First time we're doing it here. Really first time it's happening in the New Orleans area. Probably the two best teams in the boys' side in the New Orleans area, Brother Martin and Shaw, will face off on Monday at Bowmore AMF All-Star Lanes in Kenner. And we'll have a chance to bring that to you. 3:25 will be the start time for that live stream. So join us. If you haven't watched prep bowling, it's a lot of fun. You've got individual and team elements all kind of coming together. And Brother Martin, defending state champion, they are awfully good again this year.
Yeah, commitments coming fast and furious in high school football to colleges. Of course, signing day coming up next Wednesday. For the updated commitments, just go to sportsnola.com. You'll find everything you want to know. And, of course, we'll have the most extensive coverage on signing day that you can ever imagine. We'll be everywhere with videos with everyone we can possibly find. If you're on the street and you look like a recruit, we'll probably stop and talk to you.
We probably will. It's going to be a crazy Wednesday, no doubt about it. And before we go, we should mention a pretty big weekend of college basketball as well. LSU at home against the number one team in the nation, Oklahoma. I'll be up there tomorrow with some coverage.
Yeah, Buddy Hield is second leading scorer in the nation. To me, he's the best player in the country, best scorer for sure. And Ben Simmons, we'll see how he stacks up. National television audience ought to be good. This is your basic RPI game. If LSU wins this one, they're almost assured, and I say almost assured, of being in the NCAA tournament.
I think they've still got more work to do.
But they're going to win some more games.
This gets them back in the fringe of the conversation. A win over the number one team would go a long way. They've already got that win over Kentucky under their belt, but they've still got some work to do.
You win 18 or 19 and you beat Oklahoma and Kentucky, I think you're in. But that's my opinion. We'll see what happens. Lenny, as always, thanks. Have a great weekend.
We'll see you Monday.
That's our First NBC Bank weekend preview, brought to you by First NBC Bank, with 35 locations throughout South Louisiana and into the Florida Panhandle, and growing. Not splitting, but growing. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great weekend, and God bless you.